that scared people.
Nothing that I've heard you say yet gives me any insight into what you think the coalition has done wrong.
Oh, sorry. I was just pointing out that we certainly didn't follow Labor down that path. We tried to maintain a positive, upbeat campaign. We didn't get into the gutter. We didn't attack Bill Shorten and the unions in a way that we could have. We didn't expose their record on border protection as we could have. And that was because we wanted to run a positive, optimistic campaign. And clearly, people did respond to the negative campaign. I mean, we all can see that.
Michael Keane is quite rightly pointing out that the candidate for Cowan for the Labor Party has criticised our national security efforts. She did write a letter for the known hate preacher Junaid Thorne in an attempt to get him off jail time. And that was not part of the role that the federal government was funding her for. The funding that organisations linked to Anne Aly received from the government were to mentor young people before they were radicalised. It was not to write references to release convicted criminals from their jail sentence. Our point is that she's not supporting a number of our national security efforts, and this is a pattern across the Labor Party. We now see that there are about 50 Labor candidates and members who disagree with Bill Shorten when he says that he backs the Turnbull government's approach to border protection. He's got 50 people within his ranks that don't. So when Bill Shorten stands up and says we're at one with the government on national security and on border protection, that's not true, because members of his party are not.
OK, finally, a question about the election contest in your home state, and specifically the most marginal Liberal-held seat in Western Australia, Cowan. Yes. 4 senior ministers now, including yourself, have attacked the Labor candidate Anne Aly. You've specifically said Dr Aly, a world-renowned counter-radicalisation expert, doesn't support a number of your government's national security efforts. What evidence have you got for that?
I didn't attack her. I pointed out, I was asked about a letter that she wrote in support of a particular person who's been of considerable interest as a security threat, and she wrote a letter of support for him in relation to criminal charges. And I was asked about it, and it was put to me that that was her role, that's what she was being funded by the federal government for. And I said, no, that's not. She was not being funded by the federal government to write references to get people who are facing security and charges relating to their national security status. She was not being paid to write references to get them out of jail. That was the point I made.
Did you read the letter she wrote?
Yes.
It wasn't a reference.
Well, it was a letter to the judge that the judge cited as being a reason for him to get less jail time.
Dr Aly was asked by the lawyers to provide her expert analysis of the potential for her programs to work to de-radicalise the clients under the government's countering violent extremism interventions. It was in that circumstance she was asked to provide her opinion.
Well, as I said, that's not what I understood the program was for, to provide references to get people out of jail.
Nowhere
or lessen their jail time.
Nowhere in that letter does she seek a reduced sentence. What the letter recommends is the benefits to one particular man, Mr Mustafa, Mr Thorne, the more culpable one, his 19-year-old co-accused, and it recommends that he breaks ties with Mr Thorne to stop further radicalisation. She goes on to recommend family counselling, a return to university, all of which I understand has happened. Isn't this approach to counter-radicalisation consistent with the strategy advanced on the Attorney-General's website?
Well, that's not my understanding. It's all about trying to prevent people from being radicalised.
Dr Aly is regarded as a world expert in terrorism and counter-radicalisation. She's been asked to advise NATO, the UN, the US Department of Homeland Security. Have you actually read the letter in full in its context?
Emma, I was asked about this, probably by the ABC, I would suggest, in a doorstop, and I gave my answer then. It's not right to say I'm attacking people. I was answering a question about what our radicalisation program was about. And my view, it was not about providing support for people to spend less time in jail. The whole issue of national security is a very important one. We take it very seriously. We've increased funding for our law enforcement, our security, our intelligence agencies. We have de-radicalisation programs in place, and we also expect people to support those who are particularly in government programs. We expect them to support the national security laws that are now part of the laws of this country.
Julie Bishop, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.